Good evening. It's actually nighttime here where I am in Arizona. I live just in the southern part of Phoenix in a community called Albuquerque. But it's probably 11:30, 11:45 at night. I'm just have one of those nights I'm awake. Um, and I decided this is a video that I wanted to make. I was thinking about doing it tomorrow. I was like, well, I'm awake now. Maybe this will help my mind unwind and as I put things together. Um, and so what this is, it's the Ethereal Visions Illuminated Tarot deck. This is the original. And then Ethereal Visions Tarot, the Luna edition. Now, if you watched the 10 decks never leaving my collection, the VR to Simon at the Hermit's Cave, or hashtag, I get them mixed up. What do you call it? A VR or a hashtag? Or probably both, right? But this is the first deck I ever owned. And it has a special place in my heart. And I never thought I would get the Luna just because I didn't feel a need to have it. But then I came across it in a resale shop. It's a shop that does used books and tarot decks, oracle decks, musical instruments, LPs, CDs, cassettes, all the old video gaming stuff. And they purchase these things from customers or search for them throughout the country, bring them in and resell them. So it's a really good place, but they had this at a very good price, more than half off the list price, so under $10. And so I decided to go ahead and get it. And we'll just go ahead and get started a little bit, and I'll talk as I'm flipping through the cards, because I do want to discuss why this deck came to be a little bit, but I can do that while I'm flipping through the cards, so we don't have this whole discussion. Now, if you look, the books are very similar. In fact, they may be identical except for the changes that were made to the cards. I'll just do a page number. So this is 139. I bet this is probably the same, 139. So he's made these identical, which I love. And then you'll see you have the description along with a picture of the card and the minors. The majors get a full page picture, and even the minors and the majors are in full color. So very typical sort of meanings for these, various RWS. So if you like the RWS and that's what you're used to, these are very good. Of course, excuse me, every deck that comes out, you can tell they're quite thick, 139. It'll have its own take on things. So even though it has the regular RWS meanings, it never hurts to flip through the book every now and then just to see what the author's insight was, because that's how we learn from each other, right? The boxes are a hard, good sturdy box. The back, it has a description of the deck by Matt Hughes. And then this, of course, is US Games. Same deck design here. A little bit different color. I don't know if you can see that on screen, but they are different colors. This is very much more of a mint. This is more of the color of what I would call sage, or sage. So that's the difference there. And you see the backs are greatly different. The cardstock, I can't feel any difference. If anything, this one might be just a tiny bit more matte, but I don't think so. They feel very similar. And they are exactly the same size with even the same corner rounding. So I think it's absolutely cool that they did that. I think it's kind of a shame they don't have the same back, because then you could mix and match. You can still do that anyway, but I think it would bother me a little bit. But you could take your favorite cards from this deck, and mix and match them. But that's not a big deal. All right, so let me turn these over, and then we'll start the flip through, and we can see the changes that are made. Some are just going to be visual, and then some are going to be more profound, and I'll discuss that in a minute. Let me get this over here, right? Oh, I was going to mention, I noticed that some people, when they did these videos, had their crystals around and things like that. I know this Simon at the Hermit's Cave does his. And I don't think his get moved around very much, but these are not where these things usually live. Normally they're right over here to my right, and then I have them set up. But I found, and I was watching Marilyn's tarot take, and I noticed that she has hers around while she's videoing, but I don't think that's where hers live on a regular basis either, because every time she has a video, it's changed out either for the energy that certain crystal gives. I mean, I'm guessing, but maybe she can message in the comments below to tell us. But maybe it's the energy that the deck pulls through and it matches the stone or crystal better. Maybe it's what she was working with that day. I don't know. But I do know that they change, and it's probably not where those stones and crystals live throughout the day. But I found that doing this, I'm not having to worry about, am I in frame or did I go too far left or too far right? This keeps me in frame. So if somebody ever says that crystals don't have power, they do. You can just reassure them, oh yeah, no, crystals actually do have power in photography and videos. It keeps you in frame. They won't know what the heck you're talking about, but I think it's funny. And it's late and I'm kind of probably getting punchy. All right, I'm gonna go in just a little bit further, not too close. And then this will hopefully not be an edited video, so all these little things you'll get to see. All right, the first one is the Fool, of course, and you'll see it's mostly on this one coloration differences. These are gold stamped, and these have that, I forget what it's called, but this the multicolored. I know there's a name for it. You'll notice the stars on the umbrella are a lot darker. The colors on this one are just richer on this one. I'm not sure about all the cards, but at least on this one. So very much different. I will talk about the cards we're going through the majors, and then I'll switch over to the minors and discuss what I wanted to about the decks. But you can see the differences here. We went from male to female, and we also went a little bit more ethnic. It's not very clear, so this is, I'm going to say, multicultural, which makes perfect sense. I know a lot of people that I work with, and a lot of my students are multicultural. They are a mix of Asian and Latin American or Spanish and Asian. I said that. Asian, Latin American, Spanish, African American, and it's just a blend. And sometimes, you know, all based on genetics. The genetics in one pool is stronger than another, but sometimes you can tell they're completely from these different gene pools, and I think it's fascinating. It's like nature painting, you know, nature paints with genetics. And I think it's beautiful. You see a difference here in the Emperor. This sort of like the old wise king. This more of the I find this one interesting because when I look at this image, I see what appears to me to be more of a European type crown and the ermine on the robe. But the robe itself is not necessarily European, because all cultures have robes of some type. But then on the cuff is the ankh, which is, of course, Egyptian. So I think once again, he looks like he would be from the continent of Africa, some unknown country there or area. But his clothing and his signets are blended from Egypt to Europe, all around. And when I saw this card, it reminded me of, I have the Divine Masculine Oracle deck. Oh, I'm knocking stuff over. And in that are some gods that are from the African traditions. And he reminds me very much of one of those. I think it's a beautiful card. So I'm not upset at all that he made these. The Hierophant, more traditional, which I love. This one, though, it's inviting you to enter the portal and walk into the unknown and learn sort of for yourself or be guided by your spirit guides. But I just love that take on it. So I'm glad he didn't just Okay. The reason he created the Luna edition, to my understanding, is that people really love this deck, but they thought it was not diverse enough. It really is Eurocentric in the sense that it's all Caucasians or whites. And so he created this deck to correct that. Also diversity in displaying feminine and masculine. Some cards stayed the same. Some changed drastically. This one went to a more rich night scene. This one still stays sort of pale. But then, like the strength card, there is definite change on the focus on the race, which I don't have a problem with. But this is why I didn't think I was necessarily going to get it at first, because I didn't need another one of this because I'm a white male. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. But the beauty with which he did this, he didn't just go in and choose a brown crayon and keep all the figures the same, just change the skin tones. He didn't just add melanin. He added true cultural aspects, a blending of races in some aspects. Others look more directly aligned with where they're from or who they're from. And it might just be that one gene pool is fighting through stronger than another. But then that brings me to another point, is that he's done a really good job with this as far as bringing in, making it multicultural, making it feel real as far as the images and the pictures and the possible backgrounds of the meanings. There are a few decks out there. I'm not going to mention any by name because I'll let you be your own judges. But there are a few decks out there that will state they are inclusive or however it's stated, but just the normal catchwords. And I find it sometimes it's done without care. It's done just to do it, to say, oh, I made a multi-ethnic deck, or I made an inclusive deck. And it overcorrects. And I am by no means saying that there was a lack of representation of different cultures, different peoples, different, not life choices is the wrong word. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Different views of masculine and feminine and how those interact and the definitions of gender. There you go. I could not think of the word gender. So and there are some decks that have done a really good job with that, but some have overcorrected to the point to where they are for a specific target group and they don't sell to the broader public. I think the way he's done this deck, it sells to the broader public. Now, there is room for those niche decks. There is nothing wrong with that. But I think we can all agree that feminine decks, be they tarot or be they oracle, far outweigh masculine decks, say. And that decks that feature white heterosexual people, we assume they're heterosexual, far outweigh the number of decks that show diversity and inclusion. I mean, that is not even a point to argue on. These here, I'm doing these. This is the. Did I do those backwards? Okay, here we go. This is this one, and this is this one. So fairly much the same, just a little bit darker, richer in colors on the Luna edition. So that'll be the focus with some of the cards on that. So, I forgot my train of thought. But anyway, so yes, there has been overrepresentation for a couple of groups, and less representation for, I don't know if I want to call them minority groups or not, but maybe it is minority groups. I don't know. When you have discussions like these, sometimes it's very difficult because you are communicating with other people what you're thinking and what your beliefs are. And then based on the semantics of how I'm wording something, I can offend someone unintentionally or unknowingly. So if I do that in the course of this, instead of getting mad or not saying anything or clicking off the video, please mention it in the comments or private message me. You can do that too. willstaropath@gmail.com. But it, educate me. Tell me what I said and how I said it and how I better could say it. And maybe that's something for both of us to learn on, is maybe you learn what I actually meant and then you can teach me how to actually say it. But these are absolutely beautiful. Some of these you're not going to see changes. You really don't here. This one's a little bit darker. The hairstyle didn't change much, but that doesn't matter for this one. I don't think there was just melanin added here, but I think it goes to show that cross-border European African continent mix that does exist in many places. I also thought one of the funniest things is that I love Egyptian decks and Egyptian art and tone and those sort of things, but most of the Egyptian decks that were created, of course, from the past up until even the 90s or 2000s, maybe even today, they're all white, and Egypt is on the African continent. And if anything, it would be both. You should see in that deck a mix of races, and a mix of relationship types, because there was nothing completely heterosexual about Egypt or Rome at the time those two were sort of merging together, or Egypt came under the Ptolemaic line of rulers, which came from the Macedonian Empire, which is Alexander the Great. Anyway, long story short, that entire area is a melting pot of people, races, cultures, beliefs, life styles, or genetic pools. And so it just doesn't make any sense that it would be a deck of white people. Now, one thing I'll say is that in some of the decks that are strictly European in nature, so you're doing a Druid deck or a Celtic deck or a deck of, like the deck of the Old Path, that's really or the Marseille decks or Italian decks, those are based in the European countries. And so it's not that different races didn't exist within those societies, but they wouldn't have been prolific, that I'm aware of. If I'm wrong, please let me know. There would have been trade. There would have been dignitaries visiting from other countries. But to have a deck that is based in a tribe that might be from Scotland or Ireland or the British Isles, and then to say it's not diverse enough, I think is not fair. I don't think those decks need to be corrected. Because if you're doing a deck based on that time period, then to me that is historically accurate. And to make it into something that the artist is only going to paint what you know. That's the first rule of art, right? So I look at it as the artist paints what they know. And we're very fortunate to have more artists that know more, know plenty about painting or drawing, sketching, whatever. Developing art based on multiculturalism, based on the different races in the world, and based on diversity and inclusion. But we're very fortunate to have those people. And we're very fortunate that they have the ability and freedom to do that now. This is a lot of the older decks were done at a time when publishers wouldn't touch them. Women had to use male names to get their books published. African Americans had to publish under either a pseudonym or under the name of another author to get published. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. It's not completely level. I'm not saying that by any means, but it's not the same as it was. And so I think we have to be careful to acknowledge the people that do this well. Mr. Hughes here is an example. And to not feel like we have to force everyone into that. Because if I were to create a deck, I don't know if I would have the ability. Let me put it this way. If I created, I could mostly probably be some type of collage or abstract deck. But if I were an artist and I really knew how to draw the human figure, for me, as a white male in my 50s from the South, I think it would be very disingenuous of me to try to portray emotions and situations that I'm unfamiliar with and try to sell that as a tool for people to use for divination. Now, if I were just to practice sketching, then certainly I would practice different people and shapes and things, but I wouldn't sell it to the world with like, oh, look, this has really deep meaning, because I think it has to come from a genuine place. I can think I know, I can read and understand that way. I can have people tell me their stories, but it's their story. It's not my story. So I think it comes a lot better from an artist who is able to empathically or mentally or through divination, whatever the process is, to channel those images that portray what the real story actually is, and it not come across as, oh, I did this because I needed to include something in my work to check off a box. I think genuine knowledge or empathy or feeling or experience speaks through the art. So I'm not quite sure what Hughes did to tap into that, but he did a beautiful job. And then just back to the sort of like the Celtic Druidic type of decks, and saying they're European, they're not very diverse. Well, I think we forget sometimes that even though they may be classified into the same race now, that all of those different groups were tribes. It's just like if we had a deck based in Africa, which there are those, then we have to remember, I forget how many countries are in Africa, but it's amazing the number of countries. I want to think it's over 200, but I'm not sure. Anyway, and then the languages, and then the cultures, and the tribes. They're all multi. So if you have a deck that says it's an African deck, or did it take the time to actually incorporate, is it diverse? Is it showing inclusion within that particular segment of peoples, the peoples from that continent, meaning, is it showing the correct tools associated to a certain tribe or nation area? Is it showing the correct dress, clothing styles from that section or peoples? Is it showing the right landscapes from that area? Because Africa is very vast, and the landscape goes from desert to mountains to sea to great grasslands. So I think we have to be careful sometimes when we talk about, it's not diverse enough, it's not inclusive enough. Well, then what do we mean by that? What's the deeper discussion there? We're coming up on one of my favorite cards here, by the way. This one is my absolute favorite card. And I love this because I have Native American friends. And I have a lot of students that are Native American. And I live in Arizona. A large parts of the state and neighboring states are reservations, the native lands, native peoples. And so that culture is prolific through the Valley of the Sun where I live, where Phoenix is. And it's a beautiful culture. And I've gotten to know it better being here. So I just do think that's a beautiful card. But that's my take, my 2 cents. I would love your thoughts, 1, on this deck, and 2, on both decks really, but the updated version. I think he did a great job bringing in different peoples and different cultures and different what's the word I'm looking for, and making it inclusive in a way that feels genuine. And that's the point. It's I love the mix of cultures. I love seeing the different body types. I love the adventure in knowing and learning and growing myself and asking myself, where may I be discriminating, or where may my there's another word I'm looking for, but I love her mohawk. See, he did such a good job with this. Just an excellent job. I say she. I don't know what pronoun they use because she didn't tell me, so I'm gonna say she. But her hair is like this. It's short. So it presents, and she's the knight. So this presents more masculine, but we know that she has a female makeup. But it fits. I know people like this. I wouldn't feel right drawing them because I feel like it should come from a place of knowing what they feel and how they process. But somehow he tapped into that because it feels genuine, and you can't fake that. So he may just be more in tune to that better than I am, which is great. Maybe that's an area that I'll continue to grow in. This card right here is one thing that made me think about buying it, because children especially do not see. I saw a post on Facebook one time, and it was addressed as your twin day or something in school, and it was elementary boys about the same size. One was white, one was black, and they wore the same outfit, and they thought they were twins. They could not be told otherwise. They had no idea. Well, what do you mean we're not the same race or color? We're twins, because they were best friends, which I think is lovely. So here's another inclusive card. I know people in these relationships, and they're and I love them. And what I could do with this, if I were to draw this, it irritates me that people get so upset about a same-sex couple or binary. What's another term anyway? I can't remember all the terms, and I'm sorry. But when a couple that doesn't fit their version of normal has a child, they think it's awful. But then if this child was adopted, then where would that child have gone? I've known, in my teaching career, I've known so many students that have been in 6 or more foster homes since birth, and they've never had a solid home. And I've had only a couple out of all the foster home, group home children I've had, only a couple, this great here, Queen of Swords and King of Swords, and they really do look like they are regal. It's absolutely regal. But only a couple were adopted. And when they were adopted, there was just a change in their demeanor, the way they held themselves, the way they felt about themselves, the way they carried themselves. I want to make sure I'm getting these mixed up. Yeah, this is Luna. So that's my take on that. I am glad that I got this deck. And if I had not found it at such a cheap price, I probably wouldn't have. Because I worry that when a deck is created to change things, to make it more inclusive, that it's done, and I really believe it, in some cases it's done because the creator doesn't want to have a negative stigma. I don't know, but or they do it for the profit margin. Oh, well, if this deck's not selling and somebody said it's not inclusive enough, then I'll create this one. I don't think that's it. But I think there's a place in our world for both of these decks because they were created with genuine intent, and the art expressed shows a genuine understanding of the people represented on the cards. And that's my point, is that cannot always be done. So we shouldn't always expect it. And sometimes, regardless of our cultural background or our race, we have to appreciate the art from where it came from and who it came from, and the place of care and genuine feeling that it came from within that person. And if those things are true and balanced and in line with a moral, ethical code that is good for all, then those decks, regardless of the amount of inclusivity or racial parity, wouldn't matter. And when the decks come along that are inclusive and are multicultural, are multiracial, come along, if they are always genuine and come from a real place of understanding and empathy from the artist, then they will always be welcome. So that is my take on inclusivity, and my take on these two decks. Absolutely love this deck. My first deck ever. I'm very glad it now has a sister. I started to call it a brother, but it really feels more like a sister. A paternal twin, maybe, because they're not identical, but they're similar enough to be paternal twins and not maternal twins. So I hope you have a great night. I hope you enjoyed this discussion, and I'll see you next time. Bye.